So all during this time, I am starting to see the just outrageous behavior, not of Muslims, but of Christians, in regards to what had happened on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. Interestingly enough, the vast majority of the response has only been focused upon the first night. I may have missed it, but I haven't seen anybody say anything about the second night. I haven't seen anybody, because look, you watch it, and here is a Christian, and you may not think I'm a scholar or anything else, but here's a Christian explaining the Trinity, the necessity of the atonement, just all sorts of stuff, right there in the mosque with the Muslims seated all around me on the floor. And of course, the wimpy Christians in the chairs in the back, but because we can't sit on the floor very long. But what are you supposed to criticize about that? Now, I suppose there are probably people on Dr. Qadi's side, though he has said there really has been very little of it, that would contact him and demand that he refute what I said. But see, the both of us knew what we were actually doing, what the nature of a dialogue is over against a debate. And so we actually did what we're supposed to do. We actually followed the rules, showed respect for one another. And I think one of the things that some people have had a lot of problem with is I obviously respect Dr. Qadi. And people who don't believe that there are multiple viewpoints amongst Muslims. For some reason, there are people who are absolutely wedded to the idea that ISIS is the only true Islam, everything else is false Islam, and therefore, if you talk to somebody who has actually been marked for death by ISIS, you're actually talking to someone who's just trying to fool you anyways. So the idea of being respectful, in fact, even using that other word, loving the Muslims you're talking to, praying for them, acting like Christ to them. You're not supposed to do that. It's only supposed to be warfare. You're supposed to insult these people, rip their lips off, start off by insulting Muhammad or something. That'll get them. We'll get them. That's the exact attitude I have spoken against for my entire ministry. How many times, decades ago, in taking people up to Salt Lake City, have I used the illustration that I'd rather have 5 people with me who knew the gospel and could present it with clarity rather than 50 people who could rip and shred Joseph Smith but had nothing to give in its place? How many times have I done that? There's only a handful of people who could testify about that because there were so few people we knew back then. We were so small. But I have. And I have often spoken against the idea of people who just want to get their theological sword bloody. They think that the greatest example of their spirituality is that they have blood all over the theological sword. And so they will start from the first get-go of the articles they write, debates they do, presentations they do. The first 3 sentences will be intended to offend, and I simply say, close the minds of everyone that they would otherwise be able to reach. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. So, anyway, it was distracting while I was in Laurel to have all this stuff happening. And I said almost nothing. I mean, I think I made a very brief Facebook comment about a couple things. But really just watched as this thing started snowballing, and even as other people started getting involved, other people that I thought were friends, and then, contact James's church and shame him, and people, the folks in Laurel were contacted by someone through Facebook, attacking me, requested to do so from these individuals. The folks in Dallas likewise had a conversation. And it's just totally willing. Here I am talking about justification, sola scriptura. No, it doesn't matter. You've left the reservation. Actually, I didn't change. Well, I'll take that back. I have changed. And the way I've changed is I actually want to be more like Jesus when I debate than I used to. So I want to, if I can get to know the person that I'm going to be debating, if I can treat them as a human being rather than just simply the other guy, that changes the whole character. You know when I discovered this? I discovered this primarily in Dublin when I debated Adnan Rashid. Adnan and I met between the two debates in Dublin, and we had lunch. And you know what? If you watch those two debates, you can tell which one's which. You can tell which one is pre-lunch and post-lunch, in the sense that it changes the nature of even debates. You know, so many people commented on the debate at Kensington Temple in London. Well, why? Well, because Adnan and I like each other. That's why. Now, if I'm running around ripping Adnan's lips off at every... Does that mean I agree with Adnan Rashid? No, and he doesn't expect me to. There are just some people that trying to keep that balance, respecting someone and disagreeing with them the same, can't do it. And you know what? A lot of that's part of fundamentalist thinking. It really is. Let's just be honest. That comes out of American fundamentalism in many ways. There are other people that do it. That kind of thinking is all around the world, but in our experience, that's where a lot of it comes from. What I've said is I'm going to take this time, having reported on what happened, to respond to the criticisms that have been leveled against this ministry, so much so that there are now people who not only will not work with me any longer, though they have worked with me in the past, friends who now are identifying me as an apostate, as someone to be avoided. The level of vitriol, the level of invective, and the irony is, see, what happened was that I don't know what has happened to cause Sam Shamoun to come after me the way that he has decided to do so. Up through November, we had fairly regular conversations. There have been many times in the past when I've had to object to Sam's language and his behavior toward others. But at the same time, if I have things to repent for, the first would be the one I mentioned earlier, and that is in the past, ever having done debates where the individual I was debating was not a very important part of my thinking in regards to a desire to see that individual see Christ in me. If anyone engages in debate that does not have that desire, they shouldn't be doing it. Not as a Christian. There is no place for hatred. And I think what people really struggle with is the balance between a zeal for truth, a desire to defend the truth, a hatred of the perversion of the truth. That becomes all-consuming, so that you transfer that over to the individual and you view them as the one that's doing this rather than the victim of having been deceived themselves or whatever else it might be. And the problem is, I can't look into people's hearts, and neither can anyone else. And I shocked a lot of people back when ISIS first was formed by pointing out that these ISIS fighters, these individuals, the reality is they look just like the Apostle Paul did as he got onto his animal to head for Damascus. And look what God did. And I see so many Christians that just simply want to see these people blown up, incinerated, nuked, whatever else it might be. And very few of them are praying passionately for the salvation of all the Muslim people, including them. And so there was more than once when there's something, I forget when it was. I think it was last year sometime, maybe early last year, or late 2015. Don't remember what it was. But Yusuf Ismail sent me materials about some of the things that Sam Shamoun had said. And I've heard clips from Pal Talk. Anybody using Pal Talk's in trouble. That's just all there is to it. Pal Talk is just, Pal Talk's bad news. But I had been sent clips that were, just, this is not how a Christian should behave. And if the first thing that I have to repent of is ever having engaged in debate for the wrong reasons with wrong attitudes, then pray that I will be better at that in the future. That you should be praying fervently for the person that you're engaging and for the people that are going to hear that in the future. And I've been thinking a lot about two specific phrases in the New Testament: adorning the gospel, or adorning the teaching. In other words, by our behavior, we can either distract from or adorn the teaching. We can make it even more understandable to someone when it is spoken with love in the heart. Gospel truth spoken in hatred will not be blessed by the Spirit of God. Gospel truth spoken in hatred will not be blessed by the Spirit of God. And so if you are one of my Muslim debate opponents in the past, I want you to understand that I pray for you. I care about you. And if I have not communicated that, part of it's because, I'm just not the warmest guy on the planet. It's always just sort of the way I am. I'm more of a, believe it or not, more of an introvert than an extrovert. But the reality is that it doesn't matter. Sam has used his being Assyrian as an excuse. Well, I'm Assyrian. We're just very aggressive. Well, I'm Scottish. That means we're very closed. Both of them are stupid excuses. The Spirit of God, if the Spirit of God dwells in you, all the rest of that stuff's ridiculous. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So I ask for your forgiveness if I have in any way not adorned the gospel. The other phrase that I've been thinking of is in Ephesians 4:15. Speaking the truth in love. Speaking the truth in love. What does it mean to be honest, to speak truth, but only within the context of love? What does that look like in our day? How do you not compromise and yet be loving? That balance is not easy, but I'm going to tell you one thing. It's cowardice and it's laziness to not try to maintain that balance. It's easy to go the nuclear route. It's easy to go the flamethrower route. That's the easy way. That's the cheap way out. Trying to maintain that balance, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It really, really is. So the other thing that I would have to repent of is there were far too many times when Sam would do something and I'm like, that's Sam the Assyrian, That's just his thing. And I didn't call him on the carpet for it, and I should have. Because there is a soft-hearted Sam Shamoun. There really is. And by the way, we've got screenshots out the wazoo on our hard drives here, including one where early on, Sam's bullying me and say, he better not do a dividing line. He'll have to deal with me, and this type of thing. And then a little bit later, debate challenges. I'm not sure how you put the two of those together, but anyway. Look, the fact of the matter is there is a soft-hearted Sam Shamoun in there somewhere. He almost never lets people see that. That's the Sam that I really liked, and that's the Sam I'm going to continue to pray for. And I was very honest with him. I said, Sam, you've just got to ask yourself an honest question. How heartfelt is your desire for the salvation of the individuals to whom you're dealing with? Because if it's heartfelt, then you're not going to put yourself in the way. He has this thing where he defends the way he talks to people by, the prophets did this, so he views himself as a prophet. And, my response was, well, okay, if you view yourself as a prophet, I'm an individual who knows my own sin knows my own pride. And I know that I need grace, and hence I need to act in grace. So if you want to defend the kind of vitriolic personal attacks you launch against Muslims, or now against me as a prophet, okay, I'm not mature enough for that. I'm not there in my sanctification. You must be much more sanctified than I am. Except for one thing. The fact of the matter is Sam Shamoun cannot control his temper. And the Muslims know it. And on Pal Talk, they know exactly what buttons to push. It's like it's like bringing up my iPhone here, and there are certain buttons I can push that will make it do certain things. And it's that predictable. They know exactly how to make him explode. Well, that really diminishes your, how much you can do when the people on the other side already view you as a foul-mouthed, angry person, and they know exactly what buttons to push to make you become foul-mouthed and angry again. That's a major problem. It really is. And I tried to deal with those things. I tried to be a friend. Starting in November of last year, things got quiet. Things just stopped. And starting in December, I start getting these little notes from people. Hey, did you see what Sam Shamoun posted? And it would be, it'd be something on ecclesiastical textism, or here's someone refuting James White on this, or here's something refuting James White on that. And he's done that over the years. And when I talk to him about it, he says, I'm just stirring the pot. Or he says, I'm a stinker, aren't I? But it just started becoming a drumbeat, just over and over. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is that this was long before the Yasser Qadhi stuff, and really long before we even mentioned that the Yasser Qadhi stuff was happening. So in other words, there was already something going on. Now, I have a theory. I think Sam's trying to prove himself to someone, but I don't have evidence. I don't have proof of it. So people say, what happened? I go, oh, ask him. He never said anything to me about this. Shockingly, day for yesterday, it was yesterday, shockingly. And this is how far into, well, I guess La La Land, I can't say that now because that's actually a movie that's up for, yeah, you didn't, well, I didn't see it either, but off into the woods, into the trees, it's gotten. Even accused me of being responsible for what happened to Eric Cantor's son. I mean, you start losing rationality about at that point. Actually, did a little bit before that. Why? What's going on here? Because so much of what Sam is saying about me now, we were having fine, warm conversations while all that stuff was going on. Never said a word about it. He was recommending me. There used to be stuff on his website about me and all sorts of stuff like that. And now all of a sudden, everything's changed. And finally, once he finally started coming out and really coming after me, after just posting all these refutation articles, the main argument was fairly straightforward. James White treats Christians worse than he treats Muslims. That's what he was telling everybody. This is, again, we have, if we have to post 100 different screenshots, we can do that. I don't want to. I have no interest in it. I have far more important things to be doing. And we can provide all this stuff, but there is the argument that I treat Christians worse than I treat Muslims. There's truth in that. There's truth in that. In this sense, I have a different standard for a Christian leader than I have for a Muslim. And the Bible tells me to have a different standard. Let not many of you be teachers, for you have the stricter judgment. There isn't, I just can't see how anyone could make an argument that we are to have a higher standard for our Muslim neighbor than we are for William Lane Craig. But the argument really becomes well, I'm not even going to say fallacious. It just becomes ridiculous when Sam is sitting there saying James White mistreats Christians, and then look how he's treating me. I think maybe he's getting around that because I've been sent a number of times now the same graphic where he liked on Facebook a comment from one of his followers calling me an apostate. And as I said, Maury's already done that. So maybe he just doesn't even think I'm a Christian. Maybe that's where he's gone now. And if that's the case, wow. There you go. From friendship to you're not even a Christian in 3 easy steps, I guess. So I do hold someone like William Lane Craig to a higher standard. But the fact of the matter is, and anybody who will honestly approach this subject knows, I have never utilized the kind of language, invective, vitriol toward William Lane Craig, Leighton Flowers, anybody on the synergist side. I'm their constant critic. But I've never used the kind of language that Sam uses not only of Muslims, but of me in criticizing them. So how can you even make the argument? There's a word for that when you judge somebody else for what you yourself are doing. And so it really, I will extend myself in mercy and grace to individuals who do not know Jesus Christ in the hope of being able to be used in bringing them to know him. Yeah, I will do that. But someone who says they know him and then either teaches falsehoods or is imbalanced, I'm going to review those things, especially when they cause damage to the cause of Christ. But I will never use the language, and have never used the language, and everybody knows this to be true, that Sam Shamoun uses on a regular basis. So the initial argument, the initial assertion, just simply doesn't have legs. It can't be established and having any meaning to it. And Sam never said a word about it to me, ever. In lengthy conversations, not a word. All of a sudden, it just sort of pops up. Now, why? Well, go back to late November, early December, and you might get a hint as to, I think, what is actually behind all of this stuff. But the big thing now, the attacks had already started. There is already a tremendously biased, anything against me he was posting, even though they all come from different perspectives. He's even said, and by the way, despite all of this, I'm not going to defend Sam. Some people say, you're stupid. No, look, it's got to be truthful. Got to be consistent. I saw a screen capture a few days ago, or maybe a week ago, even a week ago now. I'm not sure. Where Sam actually made the statement that he has abandoned belief in particular redemption because of my arguments. Not because of someone else's arguments against it, but because of my arguments. Now, when I hear someone say that, I just remember how many Mormon missionaries I've talked to on sidewalks who had no answers for anything. And yet when they walked away said, "You've strengthened my testimony in the church." That's called whistling as you walk by the graveyard. Some of you have never walked by a graveyard in the dark at night, but it's obviously you're trying to prop yourself up. And for someone to say, "I've abandoned particular because of his arguments," that's, yeah, okay, right, sure. But at the very same time that Sam is abandoning particular redemption, he's posting, yesterday or today, he posted a link to a Tim Staples article. Proclaimed Trent Horn the winner of the debate. Do we see a future Roman Catholic here? Hope not. But at the same time, going in ecclesiastical text direction, I mean, it's so scattered that I don't even know what's going on. But what happened was, and look, like I said, Sam gets angry, and if you look at a lot of these comments, it starts off in one way, and then it ends up in all caps with lots of misspelled words in it. That's generally indicative of someone who's writing with emotion. And you don't track your terminology real well when you're writing in that way. And so what happened was, and I even saw the screen cap that I think was responsible for this. Particular redemption and substitutionary atonement are not the same thing. They are related as far as consistency is concerned. I mean, substitutionary atonement is a Reformed doctrine. There may be synergists who hold it, but I'll be quite honest with you, they do so inconsistently. But in one of the screenshots I saw, Sam confused the terminology. And as a result, people started asking me, did you hear that Sam Shamoun has denied substitutionary atonement? And my response was, no, he denied particular redemption, not substitutionary atonement. If that's the case, I haven't seen it, but I know that he's abandoned a Reformed position on a particular redemption, but I don't think so. Well, I guess there was a Pulp and Pen article yesterday or today. Today, I think. I'm not sure which it was. Was it this morning? Yeah. Saying that he's abandoned substitutionary atonement. And he himself had written, again, it may have been all caps, I don't remember, but a thing, I absolutely believe in this, and so on and so forth. So, don't accuse him of what he hasn't done, but he's partially to blame for this, because when you allow your emotions to so completely overrule you, you'll make mistakes in your terminology. And there was this comment that was made, and someone was dialoguing with him about David Wood, and he actually said David Wood had as well. And of course, that's not the case as far as I know. So there you go. As far as I know, he has not abandoned substitutionary atonement. He would have to if he went the Roman direction or something like that. But as of now, it's particular redemption. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, it's sort of scary when someone starts changing their theological perspectives just simply to have another argument against someone that they are going after, and going after big time. That's not why you change your theological views. So here's the big thing. Finally, at 2:24, I knew it was going to be a long afternoon. Here's the big thing. Once I did the first dialogue with Yasser Qadi, wow, the explosion was amazing. Robert Morey, the apostasy of James White. Sam was all over it. Just, I don't think Sam slept for 2 days. I mean, he was, every few minutes, somebody was sending me something else. And I was telling people, stay away from him. You don't understand. If you do not absolutely agree with him 100%, he's going to turn on you. He's going to rebuke you. He's going to go after you. He's going to ban you. He's going to whatever. This is just the mindset that he's in right now. There's no talking to him. So don't even bother. Well, a lot of people either didn't hear the warning or whatever, and have suffered the consequences, very expected consequences in that case. And so before the second half even hit, there were people saying, Sam was saying I needed to step down from ministry, call the church, shame me for it. And what was it all about? They didn't even wait to see what the second half was going to be like. They didn't wait for the posting of the video from the second half, which came up, took a little bit longer to get up than the first one did. And so there wasn't any desire to be fair. And that's been one of the real problems is, some of these people I thought were friends, and yet they were willing to just throw me under the bus in no time, without even having any fairness or patience. Why do people today have to act in 5 minutes? This is what social media has done to us. It has to be done now. There's no time to actually allow somebody to, I hadn't even addressed the issue. And yet it's like, well, no, we're not going to, you're out of here. We'll no longer work with you, and you shouldn't be involved in doing debates with Muslims and all the rest of that kind of stuff. I was like, whoa, wow, learned a lot during that. That's for sure. But so the argument was that the fundamental argument is this: Yasser Qadi deceived people in the church, and you brought him into the church, and you didn't correct him, and you didn't contradict him, and so you are no longer worthy to be followed, listened to on the subject of Islam or anything else. You need to be out of the ministry. You're disqualified. I think I was pretty clear. Wasn't a debate. Wasn't meant to be a debate. And here's the issue. There are people who do not believe this should happen. Do not believe that I should show respect for him. Do not believe we should be talking. That the only proper relationship between us is one of bloodshed, theologically speaking. That we should be attacking one another. There should be no fellowship afterwards where we're talking with one another. That shouldn't be encouraged. This should never, ever, ever happen. The only proper way is fight, warfare, clash. That's it. And I've already told you what happened after this encounter. What is absolutely amazing to me is there are people, immediately, there were people challenging me that I'm supposed to debate them about Yasser Qadi's perspectives. So I had people saying, I challenge you to debate on Surah 9. And then in this, and it angered me, in this childish manner, and said, and you can bring Qadi along. What do you think he is? My pet or something? I mean, there's a reason why someone like him won't even think about engaging so many of the people out there. It's that attitude. But what absurdity. I don't understand the mindset that says I'm supposed to defend his position. Why am I supposed to defend his position? I don't get it. Well, you didn't contradict. We weren't debating. If you don't like his position, argue with him. He actually happens to know what he's talking about. I hope your Arabic's real good, because he knows what he's talking about. And I pointed out, by the way, what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it in the issue I downloaded, unfortunately, but twice Yasser Qadi has been targeted for death by ISIS, because he's one of those people that's put himself out there to say, this is why ISIS is wrong. This is why it needs to be condemned. Here's the legal basis, etc., etc. Now, if you want to disagree, fine, but honor the man for having convictions. Honor the man for standing up. Isn't it amazing how many times people like Sean Hannity say, where are the Muslims that condemned ISIS? They're nowhere. And then when somebody does, this is the type of treatment they get. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. So we laid it out. And the initial criticisms were solely based, once you shoved all the rest of it aside, were solely based, how dare you do something like that? That should not happen. It must simply be battle. Never understanding. Well, you know what? Battle lacking understanding produces nothing. The kind of attitude that I am getting sick and tired of seeing amongst people who call themselves Christian apologists. Paul called clanging gongs and tinkling cymbals. Knowledge without love accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes nothing. That was the nature of the conversation that took place in the mosque. And I've already told you what the result of that was in the opportunities, the conversations. Further, doors were opened rather than locked further. And there are certain people that are frightened by that. I think on the part of some, it's because of the fact that they have a certain set of arguments. And if they are to recognize for just a moment that there are different views on the other side, some of their arguments no longer work. Can you imagine if someone contacted Dr. Kadi and criticized him for having me in rather than a Roman Catholic? He doesn't represent true Christianity. Only the Pope in Rome represents true Christianity. So you shouldn't talk to him because he's not representing true Christianity. Well, there is disagreement, and we have debates over what defines true Christianity on this side of the divide between Christians and Muslims. And that's why we have the solas, and that's why we had the Reformation. What I'm hearing is, well, Yasser Qadi doesn't represent true Islam. Only ISIS does. It's the exact same argument from the other side. The exact same argument. They have their arguments. He has taken a stand. You may disagree with him if you wish. Which sort of brings me to one other thing. We're going to wrap up here eventually because I just can't go on forever. Been sitting here for a while. David Wood has sort of gotten involved. In fact, I'm hearing that he's actually on... People in the chat channel are saying that he's on Bible-thumping Wingnut right now. What?
They're responding to something I was asking them to source for me. I can't find it. I received a phone call during the show stating that David is talking about you on Bible-thumping Wingnut. I cannot prove that. I don't know, and that's what that's about.
I don't know either. I don't know. I did not understand the few things that I've seen from David. He seemed at one point wanted to do a debate with me. That's the first thing. David's done a lot of debates. I've done a lot of debates. You realize that they take time to put together and hopefully take them seriously. And I would think most fair-minded people should realize it's 2017. I am booked into 2018 right now and will be traveling far more than I should be. But it's 2017. It's the Reformation. I'm going to be doing debates with Roman Catholics, things like that. This idea that you can just simply all of a sudden throw everything off and just go do something, I'm not sure how that works. To all of my critics out there, I want to look you in the eye. I want to look into your heart and want to ask you a simple question. Do you fervently pray for the salvation of not just the vague, cloudy Muslim people? Do you pray for the salvation of the people that you're interacting with? If you have online discussions, even debates, do you pray with love in your heart that the Lord would use you to be the one to show his love to that individual? Not just, oh yes, I pray that God allow me to thrust my theological sword right through his black little heart and he'll get saved. Not that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually desiring to model, to be the instrument of demonstrating Christ's love to someone without compromise. And see, that's what you all don't get, is because I think some of you so fear that will lead to compromise that you can't even think that it's a possibility. Can't even think it's a possibility. So folks, if you've listened to all of this and you're like, okay, we've heard it, you've gone far enough, it's time to wrap it up. Okay. But please realize something. These folks are contacting my overseas associates saying they should disassociate from me. There are a lot of people that are afraid of people like Sam Shamoun. He doesn't stop. He's very zealous. And they are they're not going to stop, no matter what is said, unless I pray that the Lord would deal with Sam's heart. But we're gonna have to be answering questions. I've already had every place that I went to last week. The churches had already been contacted. And I've got to try to explain, well, this person's doing this, and this is why this person's saying that. It adds another layer, especially given some of the topics we address. There will be people who will not have us in to talk about these things because of this. It's going to happen. So we'd appreciate your prayers, and that opportunities like this would not be lost simply because there are people who fear and people who are engaging in this kind of behavior.